Thank you. We'll call the Budget and Public Employees meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Sanier.
Present.
Alderman Aldrich.
Present.
Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Schweitzer. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to first, for necessary absence, excuse the Alderwoman
From the first ward?
from the 1st
Yes.
and the Alderwoman
From the
13th.
13th. 13th.
We're still getting used to these new numbers. Okay, I'll take a motion to excuse.
Motion to excuse the Alderwoman from the first ward and the Alderwoman from the 13th ward.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 7th. Do I have a second? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Do we need a roll? Yeah, we need a roll call. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich. Chair Spencer.
Aye.
Aye, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll take up our only order of business of the day. That is Board Bill Number 1, the city's budget. And before us today, we are going to have the Collector of Revenue, Greg Daly, and then at 10 o'clock, we'll have the License Collector, Mavis Thompson. So, Mr. Daly, if you don't mind joining us up here, I think we've got your documents here. And I'm just encouraging everyone to introduce themselves, speak into the microphone, and then tell us a little bit about your office, what you do, what you're over, and give us a sense of your budget.
Good morning. My name is Greg Daly. I'm the Collector of Revenue for the City of St. Louis. I appreciate the opportunity to come before this body to share with you some of the highlights of the Collector of Revenue's office. In the rear here is Mr. Mark Stoff. He is the Chief of Staff for the Collector of Revenue, so if we have some questions, if it would be okay to refer to him, Madam Chairman, I would appreciate that opportunity.
Sure, yes, of course.
Okay. So in front of you, you have some budget meeting notes and highlights, and if I'll take the direction of how you would like for me to proceed. I can certainly run through these, or if you'd like to look at them and ask something specific or whatever, I'll be more than glad to do so. The Collector of Revenue's office is responsible for collecting taxes here in the City of St. Louis. We are involved with personal property, real estate taxes, which are due on December the 31st of each year. They are located on the first floor of City Hall. In the basement of City Hall, we have the Water and Refuse Department. They are in the basement. On the 4th floor, we have the Earnings Tax Division, and they are responsible for collecting the earnings tax here in the City of St. Louis. We have approximately 90 employees. We receive no monies from the city. We are not part of the city budget. We obviously contribute back to the city as far as the taxes that we collect, and that's pretty much an overview. Be more than glad to go over again this particular handout that I handed out to everybody. I'll be more than glad to do that.
So, Mr. Collector, if you don't mind, just broadly speaking, just for educational purposes, if you could just explain how the Collector of Revenue is a county office and why it's not under the city budget as is the case in many cities or other cities.
Yeah, the Collector of Revenue is a county office, of which I think there are six or seven county offices here in the city. And by state statute, that is, the Collector of Revenue is not part of the city budget. We are just the ones that collect the different taxes: personal property, real estate, earnings tax, water, and trash. And if I could, it's a fee-based county office. We're responsible for collecting taxes, personal property, real estate, earnings, payroll taxes, water, and trash. Collections made by the collector of revenue are distributed throughout the city to support various public services, facilities, agencies, and funds. The earnings tax is the largest funding source for the general revenue, comprising of over a third of the total dollars. As prescribed by law, the fiscal year for the collector of revenue is the first Monday in March. During the fiscal year 2023, total collections were about $835 million. Real estate and personal property, $472 million. Earnings and payroll expenses, $283 million. Water, $51 million. Trash, $15 million. And the DOR was $12 million. City disbursements breakdown, real estate, personal property, $465 million, which goes to, those disbursements go to public schools, Zoo Museum, MSD, sheltered workshops, and 12 others, 14 total. The earnings tax, earnings and payroll expense, $272 million, which goes directly into general revenue. Water, $49 million to the water division. Trash, $15 million, refuse division.
Okay, just really quickly, so I know you get no city, but you get no income from the city, but you're funded out of the taxes, is that you're collecting, is that correct? Or how is the
4%.
office? So what is the total budget of the Collector of Revenue's office with the 90 employees?
Total budget for the collector of revenue?
Yes. About 15 million. 15 million, okay. Do you have a budget that you, for the office? That
We do.
That looks similar to the budget for the city?
We do have a budget.
Would you mind sharing that with the committee?
I don't have that with me.
Okay. Would you mind sharing it with the committee?
No.
No, you don't mind, or no, you would share the budget? Sorry, Mr. Collector, I'm not understanding what you're saying.
No, I don't mind sharing it.
We would appreciate it. I think it would just be helpful. Okay, so then the cost of the office itself comes out of the taxes collected on behalf of the city? Just
That is
for clarity.
correct.
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to the committee for questions. I'll go in order of seniority. Alderman Oldenburg.
Madam Chairman. Greg, thanks for being here this morning. Despite that you're a county office and a creature of state law, there's obviously an intersection between the city's finances and all that you do. And I want to just publicly state that I always think your office is one of the most professional at City Hall. You will run like a Swiss clock, and it's not an easy task to stay organized and track and collect all the taxes and various revenues that your office does. So I want to thank you for your public service, and I appreciate you coming before us today.
Thank you, Alderman. I think that we have a very good staff that understands customer service, which is our #1 priority. The taxpayer of the city of St. Louis, that is the individual who pays the taxes. And for us, it is something that we understand that without that individual, our city doesn't move. So we work very hard at the concept of customer service.
I appreciate that, and that is absolutely noted. It's from residents and constituents of the Second Ward for sure. Also, I think it's noteworthy that you're in the community yourself. You're not, twirling your mustache up in a tower collecting revenue and counting money. You are a stalwart individual in the community with various charities. You go to every community and neighborhood meeting that I attend, so I know you're attending more than just the ones I am at, so I want to thank you for that too, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's all I have.
Alderwoman Saunier.
No questions at this time. Just thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Usually I echo the Alderwoman from the 7th, but I'll echo the Alderman from the 3rd Ward. Thank you for all in favor, aye. Thank you for the way that you run a very tight ship. Before becoming Alderman, being on the state level, I know how fiercely you always fight for the earnings tax, which I know that is in limbo. When folks in Jeff City try to take that away from us, you're not just on the front lines here in St. Louis, you take the fight up to the Capitol. And even when I worked in several departments here at City Hall, I was just able to see how amazing the staff was, how kind and professional they were, and I know that as a top-down thing, even though I know you empower your workers, which makes it bottom-up also. I do want to ask, even though like I have to jet out in 3 minutes, could you just talk about recently the closing of the DMV office, like the impact if that has on the budget, if that generated money, was it losing more money on the long haul, and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the collector of revenue has been a fee agent to the state of Missouri for as long as I've been the collector of revenue. So it's been under my jurisdiction as the administration for 18 years, but it was before me. Ron Leggett, who was the previous collector of revenue, was also a fee agent for the state of Missouri. So under my administration, we've had it for 18 years. And it came up for bid every 4 years. And so it was about 8 years ago that we came up for bid, and I think you were a state rep at that particular time, where the state of Missouri had taken it upon themselves to give it to another individual. And so with the help of our state representatives and state senators, we were able to garner it back to our under our responsibility. So what we've done is we continued for 8 more years, and this last time the state had contacted us in October to say that they were just going to extend the contract. And so we took a 6-month extension on it. And I think, you know, the basis of the whole decision not to renew the contract had a whole lot to do with the fact that we were having a difficult time hiring people in our office. And we were in a position at that particular time with the state of Missouri taking a lot of initiatives to have people doing things online. Revenue was down, and the fact that we were having a difficult time having people apply for different jobs in the office, what we did is we took the opportunity not to extend the contract, and then we moved all of our folks that were in the DOR into various positions into the collector's office. So no jobs were lost. It was just it was a decision, an administrative decision that we felt would best serve the taxpayer of the city.
Gotcha. And lastly, I also want to commend your office for moving it to the 21st century. A lot of times as a new alderman, what I've found is city government is very antiquated, and people want to come down and get their business done. I know you moved a lot of those ways people can get their business done online, which I think has speared other offices to look at ways to make it more accessible for the taxpayers. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's been very helpful to, you know, at the end of the day, the collector of revenue is in everybody's pocket. You know, we're sending out more mailings about here you owe us this and we owe you that and the whole bit. So it's imperative that our office work extremely hard at making the opportunity to pay your taxes, to operate with the collector of revenue as easy as possible.
Well, I think that does it for the alderman from the 14th. Mr. Collector, I have a couple of just follow-up questions here. With regards to your budget, one thing that would be really helpful would be kind of the breakout, especially of the cost of collecting for water and trash. We are considering right now a water hike, a much-needed increase in the cost of providing water to the city. I think it'd be helpful to understand what it is we're kind of supplementing the Collector of Revenue's office for collecting those bills for people, just as a figure for, you know, kind of doing water business. The same would be true of our trash. You know, we are considering a contract for trash disposal, significantly higher than what we're able to collect. And I don't think we're doing due diligence or due understanding of what it costs to provide those services without including the cost of collecting those fees from people. If you could also help the committee understand the percentage that goes into the administrative cost of collecting our taxes, is that, like I think you mentioned that $10 million or something like that is what your budget is for the office. How is that determined as a percentage of the overall taxes and other fees collected?
Okay, if I could, I'd like to bring Mark Stoff up, our Chief of Staff. He'd be more than able to explain that.
Mark?
Yep.
Welcome.
Mark Stoff, Chief of Staff, Collector Revenues Office.
Thank you, Mark. How long have you been with the Collector of Revenues Office?
I've been with the Collector Revenues Office for 18 years. I've been the Chief of Staff for 4 very happy months.
Okay, excellent. Well, welcome. Thank you for
Yep.
being here today.
So the bottom line is the expenses are what the expenses are. The moment we pay for everything, anything left over, those excess commissions go back to the City of St. Louis. So since Mr. Daly has taken over, $158 million in excess commissions has come back to the city. This year will be no exception. There'll be an additional $10 million that will come back to the city. I believe that disbursement payment comes in the end of the month in June. So obviously we have an operating budget that runs through March 1st, first Monday in March. You guys obviously have a fiscal year and that's different from ours, so comparisons are not exactly apples and oranges. But basically, we will develop a budget based on what we believe the costs will be. We determine the actual costs at the end. We do a cost analysis of that. Usually, we are within 0.2 to 0.5% of our estimations. There are rare occurrences. For instance, the City of St. Louis operates on a mainframe. Well, it used to operate on a mainframe. Mainframe no longer supported.
One office still does.
Yeah.
And I think they're coming next.
And we're still partially on that at this time with the earnings tax. But in order to facilitate us migrating from there, one of an added expenses that hadn't occurred prior to all this is we contracted with RSI to develop the new online filing system and repository for the City of St. Louis earnings tax. We had to do the same thing with property tax. So those were added expenses that were incurred. We paid those straight out, and then what was left over, obviously, is excess commissions. When that is no longer an item that we pay for, it doesn't stay in the budget. We drop the budget back to where it should be and continue to go and offer all the excess commissions that we have. We keep no general reserve. We keep no excess funds.
Thank you for that, Mark. It's helpful. So the expenses, what you spend on things, what you pay people, off everything from your office supplies, et cetera, who okays that budget?
So we have a finance division within our office. They present that budget to Mr. Daly. Mr. Daly approves that budget. We're audited every single year by anyone you can imagine and everyone you can imagine. And just because we're masochists, we also pay to be audited to make sure that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay, but your budget is overseen by Mr. Daly alone?
Correct.
That's such an interesting set of circumstances. I appreciate the insight there. Can you tell us a little bit, I know we have a couple of lawsuits out there on the earnings tax right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the timeline? Or this committee has been charged by the president of the board to find alternative sources of income in light of that. And kind of understanding that from your perspective, do you have any information you can share with us publicly that wouldn't hurt our standing or anything of that nature?
The only thing we can tell you is that it's currently on appeal as far as it relates to the remote work earnings tax lawsuit that goes on. I believe we are at the appellate level. We are. And I think that's pretty much all we can confirm at this moment. I will tell you that we are prepared. Should we win the case, we're prepared if we lose the case to proceed, but should we lose the case, it will be a financial impact on the City of St. Louis to the tune of anywhere between $25 and $50 million.
Per year? Or is that total?
To catch up, and then we'll have to see what the impact is when we move forward with the new ruling.
Would that impact the function or the budget of your office?
We collect anywhere from 1.5% to 4% commissions, depending on what the tax is. For the earnings and payroll expense tax, we collect 2.5% commissions on the first $800,000, and then 4% on anything after that. So assuming that comes through, it certainly would have some impact on our budget.
Okay, understood. Yeah, so just kind of going through that, those figures, those are those were kind of quickly put out there. If you don't mind sharing the budget, as Mr. Daly offered earlier, just so we have an understanding of kind of how the office works.
Sure.
Yep. We go through this lengthy process, obviously, here, overseeing the city's budget, and it's just helpful to understand how the entity that collects all these taxes functions from a financial perspective.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I appreciate you being here today. My committee has abandoned ship, so I guess that does it for the Collector of Revenue's office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Point of personal privilege?
Sure. Uh-huh.
As the collector of revenue and as a point of personal privilege, we have instituted a program called RETAF, which is the Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund. And together with Prosperity Connection, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, Park Central, and the Collector of Revenue, we have come together to help individuals who actually own their homes, do not have a mortgage, but are in the rears as far as their taxes go. This institution, RETAF, has been formed and to benefit those individuals so that the Collector of Revenue, in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, do not put these properties up for sale. Keeps people in the neighborhood, keeps them in their house, and we, at this stage of the game, has been able to help over 100 people stay in their house, stay in the neighborhood, and secure their house. So we're very proud of that, and it's working out extremely well.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yep, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Servicing us. I said if that's why those guys on the street don't trust you.
Who's that? Oh, yeah, they all live in the county. Many of them. You ready?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You know, I be trying to get us on time, handling our business. So you can go do yours. Did you find out? What
we got today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Budget and Public Employees Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Boyd. Here. Alderman Odenberg.
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Present. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich.
Present.
Chair Spencer. Present. Alderwoman Sanye. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have just one item of business today on our agenda, Board Bill Number 1, our city's budget. Today we have 2 presentations. One, CARE St. Louis at 9, starting here just now, and then following the Recorder of Deeds, Michael Butler. With that, I'd like to bring up our first presentation, Dion Flowers and CARE St. Well, that's who's on our agenda. Okay, CARE St. Louis, if you all want to come up and introduce yourselves to the committee, give us a little background of who you are, and it looks like we have a presentation. Thank you for the materials in front of us.
Good morning, everyone. I am Wang Horak. I am the founder and CEO of CARE STL. It's Center for Animal Rescue and Enrichment of St. Louis. My background, I have been in the animal rescue for the last 9 years. Prior to that, I was a CFO of a private venture capital company that is based in London. And I've traveled a lot in my life, and I settled in St. Louis in 2008. I started the shelter in 2018 when I was working with a previous shelter, and we are helping the city shelter because of the very low live release rate at the shelter. At the time, there were euthanasia of at least 2 rows or 20 animals per week. I presented to the Department of Health that, the city should hire a 501c nonprofit to run the city shelter, and luckily there was an RFP that was released in 2019, and we got the contract. Since we took over the management of the city shelter, immediately the number of animals that comes in increased. Prior to 2018, the city shelter is intaking probably 600 to 800 animals, because at the time we always pull animals from the city shelter. But based on the documents that I presented to you right now, since 2018 up to last year, it quadrupled. By the way, before I continue, I have Dion Flowers with me. She's one of the board of directors of CARE STL. And I also have Dr. Morgan. She is our city shelter medical director and veterinarian. I have only 2 things to present to you guys. The city shelter space at 2801 Clark needs to accommodate the average daily intake of 9 animals and the weekly average intake of 47 animals. Right now, the city shelter has only 70 kennels. So as you can see, we have about 70 animals in a pop-up crates. Staff members are experiencing burnout due to the increased workload, leading to a high turnover rate. Moreover, medical costs are rising, and pet owners cannot afford the necessary care for their animals, resulting in owners being evicted and surrendering their pets to the city shelter. So take note that when an owner comes to us or animal control bring animals to us because the owners were evicted, we have to take those animals. Those are the service that we provide to and especially, yes, when COVID hits, there's just really a number of pet owners who just come to the shelter and said that they cannot afford their care. There are also a lot of families that come to us, and some of them are victims of domestic violence, and we also have to accommodate their pets, and we give them 30 to 90 days to keep their pets, so that if they are able to, find homes, and we'll be able to, help them again and return their pets to them. Animals' quality of life at the current facility is also a compromise. Honestly, right now, especially this week and next week, we are having issues with a lot of animals coming in, but we do not have space inside. So we have at least 10 kennels outside. It's 90 degrees, and we have some animals there. And we tried our best. We put so many crates wherever we can put crates. But like I said, Dr. Morgan, she's going to lose her license if the animals continue to be outside at this kind of temperature. And our ordinance says that, temperature that are at least 85 and above, the animals should be inside. Or if it's in the winter, temperature that is 32 and below, the animals should be inside. Therefore, an increase in staffing is necessary to address the challenges and ensure that our shelter can continue providing essential service and care for the animals in our community. I actually presented to you the intake that we have from 2018 to 2022. As you can see, in 2018, the animals that we intake is 1,092, but last year, the animals that came in the shelter is 3,229. As you can see, every month, it continued to increase, especially when everybody comes back to work. Last year, The intake is like 249 every month, and take note, we only have 70 kennels there. So everyone else is gonna be in the pop-up crates, and it continued to increase. Last May, we have 356. Last month, we have 258, and so it's just really tough, and we only have like 6 employees right now. The city funding that we get, you can see that it's always 694 in the last 4 years, and this year we were renewed for 950,000. So if you notice, the cost of animals, when we started was 368, but as it continued to increase, then the cost per animal continues to go down. But the average, the actual cost spent to manage the city's shelter continues to go up. There is a line item where CARE STL have to do a lot of fundraising to cover for that. When we submitted the RFP for this year, we requested about 1.6, and this is because we wanted to increase the staff and also to increase the staffing in our vet clinic. However, the approved budget for this year until next year is 950. So we have a $724,000 that we need to really work hard to, attain this year. Also, I want you to know the shelter space is only 8,500 square feet. It's very, very small to handle at least 200 animals every day. And like I said, the number of kennels, I actually cut some of them in half to make it at least 90 because we still comply with the Department of Health. However, the shelter has not been, done a maintenance in the last 13 years, so there are maintenance that needs to be done. We sent the maintenance request to the maintenance department 6 weeks ago because we were audited by the Department of Ag, and they are not happy with the conditions of the kennels as well as the floor at the shelter. And we send this to the maintenance department. Oh, 13 years, I'm sorry. 13 years, yes. We opened it at 2010. So I have 2 items that I hope you guys will consider, which is budget for the shelter and shelter space for the animals. We looked, when the mayor had her speech, we saw the workhouse as an option, so we recommend using the workhouse. We brought this concern last year with the Department of Health, and but when I had a meeting with Dr. Mahdi a month ago, she said that she was approved for only 30 kennels. That's not gonna help because what we plan to do is to transfer Clark kennels into the workhouse, and we probably need at least 150 kennels with the way the number of animals is coming in right now. And if in case we transfer the facilities to the workhouse, the city will save at least $126,000 a year of lease, and we're hoping that that money can just go to the care of the animals. And also in the future, if that is the plan, there is additional costs that we are willing to partner with the city in terms of capital campaign if we are able to use the workhouse. I think that's it. If Dr. Morgan wants to add anything.
If I could, just briefly, just for comprehensive understanding here. So the city of St. Louis has a function of having a animal shelter.
Correct.
Okay, and we own a building, and the city used to run the animal shelter.
We don't own the building right now.
Okay, so at some point, I think you said in 2018, the city of St. Louis issued an RFP to sort of have somebody else run the animal shelter, but prior to that, the city of St. Louis ran its own animal shelter, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, and, okay. Okay, so the city has a function of having an animal shelter. In 2018, issued an RFP so that somebody else could run it. CARE St. Louis has won that RFP. The building you're currently located in is not a city-owned facility, is that right?
It's not.
Did you take over the lease that the city had?
No.
Ms. Flowers.
Oh, sorry, Dion, do you mind? Yeah, introduce yourself and then,
I'm
yeah.
Dion Flowers. I'm the former alderman of the Second Ward. There's a month-to-month lease right now. We do not really have a lease.
Okay.
It's month-to-month, and that's $9,000 a month.
Is the lease with the CARE St. Louis or with?
It's with the city of St. Louis.
And
So
the-
the city of St. Louis pays, and they are supposed to maintain the building.
Okay, okay, thank you, that's very helpful. Okay. Did you want to, I just want, just for, I mean, I didn't fully understand all the relationships, and I just wanted to clarify before we moved forward. Okay. Did you have anything else for the presentation before we go into questions from the committee? If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yes, hi, I am Dr. Morgan, so I'm the medical director of CARE STL. I graduated veterinary school in 2017. I also got a degree in, I got my master's in public health at that time. I have extensive background in shelter medicine, and I just came on board with CARE in March of this year. So we've been doing a lot to turn everything around. We've been very hardworking. We just built an entire veterinary clinic team we've been doing a great job, but we definitely are going to need continued support. So something I just wanted to add on to this presentation, according to the Association of Shelter Veterinarians, we do not meet the guidelines for standard of care for shelter animals. So even if we were to go to crazy levels and let's say like euthanize half our population, which is not an option in my opinion, we would still not be meeting the standard of care. Something I've noted since I've started, we've had 9 paw lacerations just from the kennels. So that's an average about 1 paw laceration a week. So the dogs just really aren't kept in safe conditions. And the floors are very, very wet. They don't drain appropriately. So, you know, we've got dogs with allergies. All of these dogs are just prone to that. And so they just are not, they're sitting in very, very poor conditions. And when that happens, they're very, very stressed, and that's going to lead them to have poor health. So all of these dogs are prone to getting a lot of diseases. You know, we absolutely have a vaccine protocol that we adhere to strictly, but a lot of these animals that owners are having to surrender or that we claim are getting really sick. So it's hard to, you know, take a dog from an owner and then say, oh, we're holding them in a place where we're returning your dog to you that's sicker than when they came in. Yes, and in addition, the dogs in the outside kennels is just absolutely unacceptable. I'm having to document, you know, every single day their condition. And a dog can, once they go into heat stroke, they can die within 90 minutes. So again, it's just not acceptable conditions for them to be in. And we are working very carefully to view every single dog's overall quality of life, right? So the shelter is not a sanctuary. Our goal is not to have long-term housing for dogs. So we are very, very carefully looking at the overall quality of life at dogs that have stayed there. But it's imperative that we have a robust adoption and foster team. So that's another reason why, you know, this budget is so important. Not only the kennel staff, but on the other side of it, our goal, we need to get these dogs out of here. That is pretty much all I have. You're welcome.
Morning. Again, my name is Dion Flowers. I'm the former alderman of the Second Ward, but I'm also the vice president on the board. And I do work there part-time. I started in September to help Wayne out because it was a clear staff problem. As you know, every industry is having issues with hiring. The animal shelter is no different. So the city has come a long way. For 18 years, I was the animal alderman down here. And so I have fought a long time to try to make sure the shelter was not only humane for animals, but also we had a public safety requirement, an issue as a city. I remember back in 2010, Rodney McAllister was killed possibly by some stray animals in the 27th Ward. Also, we got a lot of stray animals on the street, and even as a board member and a worker, I pass them by all the time. You can't pick them up. You can't save them all because we're full. We are also a no-kill shelter. Of course, you have to humanely euthanize animals for purposes, but we are a no-kill shelter, which means we get a lot of calls from a lot of people, not only in the city, but in the county as well. People concerned if they're in the county, if they go to the county, they'll be euthanized, and they won't hear. We just don't have the space. But I am an adoption coordinator, and we have a lot of calls of people that want to surrender. That's a $150 fee that we end up having to waive if we can take them on. We get a lot of calls of people being evicted, and they need to find space, and they want to claim their animals, but they don't have a space and they can't pay for boarding. So we offer those services, as well as homeless people in the winter and in the summer sometimes ask us to house their animals until they can find housing or until the weather clears up, because they cannot find housing that will take animals. And that's the one thing that may be a possible partnership with us at the workhouse with St. Patrick's Center, to be able to house some of the homeless that have animals so they can go in shelter instead of staying on the street. Because a lot of folks can't get housing if they're a couple and they're unmarried or they have a pet. It's just hard to find that. And then those animals end up on the street, end up in our shelter, end up in the street, hit by cars or in abandoned homes. We do have a wonderful volunteer base that comes in and walks and helps and cleans. We put out our pleas. We have a wonderful foster program where we have over 100 and some animals in foster care. So when we put out our plea, if we have all these animals, people will come in and house them until they're adopted. And that is a wonderful program. And we do have a high rate of adoption. But if you're getting 27 animals in a day or 9 animals in a day, and we're adopting out 20 animals, is just a revolving door. We do have a wonderful adoption program, but we're getting in, we have, what we didn't have in the past is that we have a pretty good animal control people that are out there working and are answering your service order requests and are answering your requests as aldermen for stray animals that are walking. So they're pulling them in, which before didn't happen. So thank goodness for the health department and getting hired animal control officers, but it is still a hard balance there to do. I think through the weeks, Wayne sent you all some packets which gives you breakdowns of how many animals come from your zip codes and your wards. I hope you got that and you look over that.
I don't think we received that.
We delivered it probably about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Meaning on paper?
Yeah, it was in paper, as well as we emailed it too, right? We didn't email, okay, well, that was my fault, yeah. But you did get, we did deliver them by paper.
I don't know about, I don't know mail.
Yeah, I know you all just had gotten sworn in, but last year we kind of missed the ball by not getting before the budget committee last year. So this year we were ready to roll. So as soon as you all got sworn in, we were already plotting on you to make sure you got that information. But we knew you were inundated with a lot of things going on. But we can resend it via paper and email, but we did break it down per ward and per zip code. Also, again, the concerning part of the lease is we're month to month at this time. We can be kicked out at any time. We don't have a contract. If that landlord says, okay, I don't want to deal with you anymore, we're out. And then what do? We don't have anywhere to go. I think if we had the solution where she has responded to the Imagined Workhouse, it is a viable solution for us to go to save that money, to everyone be on the same campus, having the space. We were trying to get into Northwest School in Alderwoman Boyd's ward. The issue with the school board was us putting drains in the floor at the time. Dr. Adams just really wasn't working with us, and now that building has been sitting and deteriorating, and this is something that the Alderwoman wanted to happen because she is our other Alderman champion for the pets. But unfortunately, we couldn't get that through. So we're trying at that again. We're trying at every solution we can, as well as look into buying buildings to renovate, and it be a 5-year capital campaign. But that's all I had to say. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you all for coming, and I am the Alderwoman dog person. So, a little story. I was on my way to therapy, and a car had ran into a utility pole, and this dog came up to me. And it was so heartbreaking because apparently the dog was in the car. And so I got the dog and I called the police, and the dog and I waited for the police. And of course, I called Dion like, okay, I need somebody to come get the dog. I can't leave the dog. So they did come get the dog. So I am very caring when it comes to animals because they're helpless. They're like babies. They can't take care of themselves. So I want to thank you, but I guess my question, and Dion and I have had this conversation several times, I just think it's a big communication breakdown with the city, with even Humane Society, Stray Rescue, Care St. Louis Help Animals, because especially on the weekend and evenings when people go home, nobody knows who to communicate with. And so the way the police department is strapped, trying to get through to them and having them understand the urgency of getting this animal is like, it's probably where we have to educate the police to make them understand. I do know with animal control, they have beefed up some of their staffing, but I think with this whole COVID piece, it has impacted our city as a whole. It's the families, the animals, the homeless, everybody has been impacted, and so now we're trying to get back to normal. I heard the doctor loud and clear, and it hurts me to my heart because I have two of your animals that I took on myself, and my husband really won't let me look at any information that comes because he said, if you bring another dog in this house. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out on the budget, who did you all connect with to start working? You know, because my thinking is when people do a budget, they would connect with who's ever working with them or will present. Who did you connect with to say, this is what we need, this is what's going on?
It is the Department of Health. In the past, I have direct communication with Janine Arrighi, the former commissioner, and or in the past also with Melba Moore. So what she'll tell me is, Wang, this is what we have. And then we kind of work together on, okay, but this is what we need as well at the shelter. So we work with them on this, and in fact, I did, on this RFP, I have a detailed budget submitted to the Department of Health, and when I had a meeting with them, it's just not possible to put in all the people that I need to be in place. One of them is a rescue coordinator, which actually will answer phone calls on the weekends, as well as be able to respond immediately and coordinate with the ACO supervisor. Unfortunately, in the budget and the approved budget, we have to cut that out again because I need to prioritize the caregivers at the shelter that directly, involved in the caring for the animals. But our goal is to have that one person, that phone number that will always, answer those calls.
So with the doctor, my question, in school, do you all have people that can do internships or do volunteer, to help them when they go to school?
Can you rephrase the question?
Normally, like when people go to college and stuff, they have to do internships or they have to work so many hours in their profession to be able to complete their education. So do they have that in veterinarian school?
Oh, yeah. So I actually got my 4-year college degree, and then you need to do another 4 years of veterinary school.
Okay.
At that time, we have rotations where you can kind of do your entrance, but we have to pass the board. So they teach us everything. I had to learn as much about large animals as I do about shelter medicine, even though that wasn't my interest. And then once you graduate from veterinary school, a lot of experiences on the job. So I learned a lot from my old mentor at other jobs.
So do you all, does Care St. Louis Animal Shelter, do you try to recruit people to do that for you all?
So I am very big on networking, so I love taking on students at any time. I very much believe in training new students. However, bringing on more veterinarians is not the answer because what I need is support staff. Really, and it doesn't make financial sense either, right? To pay a lot of veterinarians when what we need, I need a lot of technicians, and I train those technicians to be able to do so much on their own. So my team, I'm actually on call 24/7 for my team, and then I can answer pretty much any question, and they can triage and help sick animals at any time.
Okay, so I might not be making myself clear. This is what I'm thinking. I'm going to school to be a veterinarian, and I have to give so many intern hours where I'm volunteering to work at a shelter or whatever. I'm not getting paid. That's part of me getting my degree. So do you all have you attracted any groups to come do that?
So that would probably go through our volunteer coordinator. That wouldn't really, I have so much on my plate already.
I
We're
would
really
look for you
focused
to
on
do
the
it.
medical
Right.
aspect. And then, when you have people, so many people say, oh yeah, I want to help the clinic. We have to spend a lot of time training those people up, and then it just ends up not being worth our time. So,
Okay, so that's what I was wondering.
Dr. Morgan runs the clinic, and so our clinic is fully staffed and is awesome, doing well. What we need caretakers, which is not a glamorous job. I mean, you're coming in, you're cleaning cat litter boxes, you're cleaning dogs that's been in their urine and their feces overnight, we need caretakers at this point and adoption coordinators. And like she said, rescue folks. I know when I was an alderman, on the weekends, the police were the only ones that could dispatch the 24-hour on-call ACO. And that probably is something you all can talk to the new chief about and how they're disseminating information, because we had an officer come to the office last week with some cats, and he didn't know that he could dispatch the ACOs after hours and on the weekends. It even didn't work all the time, but it is something that should be told to the officers so that they know that they can coordinate that. But what we need is caretakers and adoption coordinators, and we just had a job fair. We hired 7 people. They have to be trained, and so we have a flyer we're going to send to you all this afternoon. If you can disseminate that to your wards and to your constituents. What is the paying rate? What's the hourly rate? $13 an hour to start. But that's what we need. We need the real guys that's in there looking after the animals, assessing them and what their issues are to better help them get adopted.
Okay, and so, so how many do you have in foster at this point? I think you had said it was 100 and.
Yes, I think today, as of today, it's about 186 animals in foster homes.
Okay.
And mostly dogs.
And your shelter holds how many?
70,
And you have how many?
150.
Okay. And so right now, we're in violation of the health codes in regards to the care of our animals.
Correct.
Okay, and so that's dollars that needs to be spent to get us in regards to being in order for the health code. But you're saying if you can utilize the workhouse, that will solve the city's problem and your problem.
Correct.
Okay, and so do you all work with Humane Society and Stray and Rescue, or do you solo?
We do. We
Okay.
work with them, and we always actually call so many rescue, including out-of-state rescue, to pull animals from us. But the problem is everyone is full.
Right.
So they can't.
So I guess my question also, if you all have an ask, your ask is to go into the workhouse.
Correct.
To utilize that building that's been sitting empty for a couple of years now.
And if we could possibly have an increase of possibly $50,000 to get us at $1 million.
Okay, so,
Staffing.
so your ask is to increase the budget
Yes.
and then have the workhouse. So the benefit for the city is that it will save them $126,000.
Only for this year, and in fact, next year, it will increase again. So, because the lease on the building keeps on increasing every
Okay.
year.
So if you're not in the building right now, it's gonna increase a savings for the city of $126,000. So if you go into the workhouse, you don't pay rent or anything. So would you, because I do hear Stray Rescue and Humane Society said they're overcrowded. So would you all be the site that you could take the overflow, or how would that work?
If we can use the facility, yes, we will just, it's not just the overflow, but it will be a place where if it's a city animals, if an animal control goes out and pick up even strays, they can just drop them off at the
Instead of someone
shelter.
coming to the building to let them in, they'll have access to it.
Yes.
And then talk about the dangerous doghouse.
Yes, so if you look at the last page of my presentation, I saw this facility on the website in the Reimagining the Workhouse. I actually have the old building as going to be the dog building, but also we have a lot of, we have at least 50 animals that are confiscated and they are deemed dangerous. Oh, not yet deemed dangerous, but they are dangerous dogs. Right now with only 70 kennels, and they are all, it's like an open room like this. All the volunteers and whoever comes in there can see those animals. Even owned animals, they can see that. The goal is to really set aside at least 50 kennels for owned and dangerous dogs so that it's not exposed to the public. And I have like that other, the Cove, as they call it in the Reimagining, we are thinking of using that as housing for homeless people with pets. For protective custody cases, we are getting a lot of protective custody from animal control, from police department, and also from people, residents of the community, just coming into us for that. And also we can use that as a safe house for domestic, victim of domestic abuse. And then the big building, we are thinking of using it as a cat building. It will be a community center for everybody, we'll set aside. And we'll have, part of our strategic plan in the next 5 years is to also offer like vocational courses to the members of the community, like dog grooming or how to take care of animals, so they can at least get a job. We plan to have a cat cafe where we will invite like whoever had, I saw one business who are into coffee, where we can train people who has no jobs to learn at least to be a barista or something in our coffee shop so that they can go out and get a job.
So how much is this capital campaign you're looking for the campus?
So I'm only looking at the 8,500 per kennel if we will transfer the facility at Clark, so that's about 2.2 million in the future. We're willing to also share with the capital campaign on that one. But the special housing for homeless people, I have a partnership with a national organization, Best Friends Animal Society, and this has been going on since last year. The problem is I cannot find a space. They are willing to invest at least $1 million to CARE STL if we can find a housing that can take homeless people with pets. That is set aside right now, and that is in partnership with St. Patrick's Center. They are the one who's gonna intake the people and also take care of them. There will be like a pantry and shower area in there for them. And then we will take care of the pets, like the medical aspect of it, and as well as the pet food or anything else.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have no more questions.
Thank you, Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. Ms. Flowers, good to see you again, as always. So $2.2 million would be the capital cost or outfit for your proposal or your response to the proposal to the Imagine Workhouse?
Yes.
And, okay. What is your best guess of the operating costs of that, of the proposal there year over year?
It would be at least 1.6 to 1.8 every year.
Got it. Yeah, and you're currently, your actual, I mean, your operating costs are around 1.5 or 1.6 now, right?
Right,
Okay, so you would maintain close to that, okay.
yes.
So the request, your request for the almost $1.7 million did not include any costs associated with your response to this RFP?
It actually include, well, it doesn't. When I send my RFP and my response to the RFP, I only requested for the staffing cost.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right, that's all very helpful.
Thank you.
Do you know what the timing is of that? Have they given you a sense of when they're hoping to begin selection of any of those proposals?
No, we have not. Nancy Cross responded to the packages I sent to everybody.
Okay.
And she said that the administration will send a response to that, but I don't know when she's gonna
Okay.
send a response. Yes, we did.
You did renew, yeah, your
Yes.
contract was renewed, okay.
We got
Okay.
the renewal, I think it was submitted last week in the ENA.
Okay, got it. All right, so that process will play out in the public way that RFPs do through the city. I think, letters of support would be helpful from the budget committee or aldermen who know that this is a cause that is worth allocating resources to. But it sounded like in the short term, an additional $50,000 for staffing would be incredibly helpful in this budget cycle. Is that right? Yeah. And that would help you get the caretakers and the
From the Department of Health.
okay,
So you could make that shortfall to $1 million, it would help.
understood. Yeah,
But that was our short ask.
okay. Great. Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you all so much.
You, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your presentation. Can we talk a little bit about there was $1 million of ARPA funds allocated for a new shelter space. Is that the case?
We are not aware of that. We're not aware of the $1 million, although when I checked the report of the Department of Health for the month of December that is actually posted on the city website, I saw that there was an
Yeah, I
allocation.
thought it was in a board bill that we voted on. I mean, I remember the conversation on it and how many of us were advocating for that $1 million to be in the ARPA funds because that was a clear need.
That will help a lot, and if
Okay.
we can actually use the facility, that will help a lot.
We have the budget directors in the room. Do we have any, could you speak to that?
You gotta come to the mic.
Yeah, do you mind coming up to the microphone, Mr. Payne? We're so sorry, I know you're joining us to be helpful, and so we're just going to call on you to inform us of.
Pay attention to the
Yes.
next time, what part of the meeting is.
Yes,
going
yes,
on.
yes. Next time you'll stay far away from them, I'm sure.
Watch on YouTube.
Yeah, there was an item, animal care and control, and I believe that's ordinance 71591 that had an allocation of $1 million.
I mean, that was specifically for shelter space. I remember that. It wasn't just
It just,
for operating.
yeah, the title of it says animal care and control, so
Okay.
whatever that.
And Paul, when did that pass? When was that ordinance passed? What year?
That I don't have in front of me.
What was the,
If I do have the other,
It wasn't 184. It was after 184 or before?
yeah, I don't.
thank you. Sorry to put you on the hot seat.
Yeah, we'll look into that. Yeah, so that obviously has to be encumbered by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. We'll make sure that we know how that piece figures in. In terms of the just capital needs of CARE St. Louis, so you said that you need an additional, you want to get to 100 kennels. And right now you have 90 kennels, and how many dogs in crates?
So it's 150, but right now we have about 70 in crates.
70 in
And
crates.
also, I would say all offices have animals,
All offices.
all of our offices.
Okay, and then,
Like to increase too much.
Yeah, we want to increase.
kennels.
Kennels, yes.
Right.
And
And-
that doesn't include the cats, by the way.
Sure. Yeah, I've been to your facility, so I'm aware of how the different rooms look and how it all works. But, so for the kennel space, if you were to increase to that amount, does this space have even the room? So it's sort of like, that's what you want, but that's never gonna happen in this site? that
Not
you
in
have
this
now?
site, yes.
Okay. And then for the crates, you have a certain number of crates, and that's where the dogs are being injured? Not in the kennels?
In the kennels,
Okay, so,
because we have a metal kennels.
okay. And you want those ones, would you be wanting to buy similar kennels or new kennels, different, not lacerating?
It will probably a different one, so that's why the cost is $8,500 per kennel. We will follow the recommended by sheltering management about proper kenneling.
Right. Yeah, that's just an interesting conundrum with,
Yes.
you know, the kennels are bigger but more dangerous for the dog. I mean, how does that work out?
It's really hard right now, and we will probably reuse the 50 of them for dangerous dogs, but the rest of them will have to go to a really, you know, different type of kennels.
Okay.
Right now, we even have to, unfortunately, the most dangerous dog needs to be housed outside because we don't want the public to be always seeing them, and then because they don't have access every time on the outside kennel. But then at the same time, we just, you know, there's just no space to put them because normally those dangerous dogs are also big. They will not fit in a crate.
So there is no line item in here for repairs to any of those?
But she said she sent the request over to the city to have it done.
Yeah, the contract
Okay, so the
says.
maintenance is supposed to
yes.
be taking care of this and they haven't, so we need to send some
Yes.
angry emails or something.
So our contract says that if we have issues with the facility, that we have to send an email to the facilities management.
Okay, yeah, because that's, you know, this is, the being a humane place to live in the city should start with our most vulnerable population when, you know, as Alderman Boyd so rightly said, these animals are definitely among the most vulnerable in the city. So really appreciate you being here and all the work that you do. I don't have any further questions. Thanks so much.
Alderwoman Sonier.
Hello, nice to see you all. Thank you for coming. I hope to take one of those cats off your hand very soon. I want a little kitten, and I've already named it Faith, so I'm just putting that out there. And also, I'm just glad. I always felt like we had a strong animal division and department, but then I think especially since being here, the amount of times that I see them now and to get calls and references about them, but at least since I've been here, a lot of times by the time I'm even responding to the email, the person is responding saying, oh, animal control has come out and picked it up already. So you guys are moving, extremely fast, and I appreciate that. And you all must have a good line of communication with the Department of Health, and I like seeing that because often departments talk about how they're not as connected and communication can be better. Alderwoman Ann really answered my question. I had questions about the kettles, and so was 30 kettles, was that chosen because that's what you have capacity for? I guess my question is, what do you have, if we were to be interested in figuring out how we can, obviously don't have capacity for 150 of them, how many do you think you may have capacity for?
So when the 30 kennels came up, actually we were not aware initially on that one. When we had a meeting with the Department of Health, our goal is to find a different facility so we can add more kennels. But what we didn't know is, thanks to Dr. Madi, she was able to get the approval to build 30 kennels at the workhouse. But the problem is because of the budget, we cannot put more staffing, and now we will have to manage another building, which will be the third building. So our goal, instead of using the 30 kennels, why can't we just build 100 kennels at the workhouse? That will help a lot. That means we will transfer all the Clark kennels into the facility.
I think the 30 kennels was the response that Dr. Madi had for our overflow. So I think I think at the time, Dr. Mahdi answered our asks for overflow, because it was kind of cold, and so I think that's where the 30 kennel idea came from. It was just for overflow, I think.
And I understand the reimagine the workhouse and wanting to go into that space. I guess my other concern is, I don't know the timeline on that, so I'm wondering, is there any other interim options or anything that we can potentially do in the interim until, because I imagine it's going to take a while. They're going to have to collect all the data, talk to everybody who, you know, look at everybody's proposal or submission on how they want to use the space, put it all together, probably have a public hearing. You know, I just imagine it's going to be a process. Do you guys have anything that we can do in the meantime to help outside of, before that may be an option?
So we really need help with extra staffing because we wanted to, with the number of animals that coming in, we want to add more staff in the adoption and foster department so that these people, when an animal comes in, they can really immediately identify if this animal can go to foster. I really, really want to hire a rescue coordinator who will market all the animals that come into the shelter into another rescue. We did had a good conversation with the animal control supervisor on that one because I raised my hand last week because there's really no space to put in. So I requested for at least 2 weeks of just taking in confiscation, injured, emergency, all those type of cases so for us to be able to move animals out. And they did. They cannot promise that we can do that, but at least, you know, that is something that will help us. So additional staffing, I was not able to get the one that I requested in the budget. I requested, when I put together the budget, it is hiring at least 6 full-time and 14 part-time employees. At this rate, I can only hire 2 full-time and then probably 8 part-time, and that's only for caregiver because I also need to follow the animal to staff ratio, and in the new ratio and based on the approved budget, my staff will have to walk at least 40 animals a day. So yes. So that includes cleaning the kennel and walking this animal twice at the shelter, and it's 40 animals. 40, yes. The right ratio should be at least 20. And so that means at least hiring more part-timers to come in the afternoon to start walking animals.
And you said you have 2 full-time right now, and how many part-time?
Additional full-time that I am planning. Right now, we only have 6 full-time, and then about 3 part-time that cleans the kennels. There is also a lot of requests from the public to be open a little later, and also similar with the ACO's request, so they can, you know, when they get a call after 5 o'clock, they can still bring these animals to the shelter. Right now, we have the goal of at least responding to those calls until 10 p.m. We have not figured out yet being on call 24 hours a day because we are still hiring people to be able to schedule people on call. That is why I'm gonna distribute flyers to you guys so that you can distribute it into your ward. And we are hoping to get more people to come and apply. I am doing interviews every Saturday until July 1, just so people can just come in and then we'll do the interviews.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Kara, for being here and presenting some very informative information. I know Alderwoman Boyd is the dog lady, alder lady, dog person, cat person. But if y'all need champion, if y'all need an alder cat man champion, only, yeah, I got y'all.
Agreed.
A question. So, and maybe you answer this, and I'm curious, what have you guys looked to see? Well, I'm curious why over the last several years there's been more and more and more intake. Was that like post-pandemic, people have lost homes or can't afford to get the necessary needs for their animals anymore? I was just curious of what the uptake has been in that.
It is. The number one reason animal comes in are eviction at this time. And also they cannot find, they get evicted and then they look for affordable housing, but this housing doesn't accept animals. Even if sometimes we offer to pay the deposit for their pets, but the problem is the landlord is not allowing pets into the apartments. And so we have a lot of those evictions, and because a lot of them doesn't know that we have the city shelter they can call to surrender pets, they will just release these dogs on the street. Now we have a lot of strays. And so, yeah, and so we're pushing, yeah, we want to push spay and neuter, and that's why actually we've been doing community clinic in Alderwoman's Boyd. We did one also in the south side. But this is actually an option for you guys to put together. What I'm thinking, which I discussed with Dion, is attend to your neighborhood meeting so that we can tell them that I do want to have a neighborhood and pet ambassador. So this person that you will identify in your neighborhood, the community in that neighborhood can reach out to that ambassador, and that ambassador will call CARE STL for the needs. We want their pets to stay in the home, so if they just need food for their pets because they can no longer afford to buy food, or if they just need medication for their pets, if they are sick, we're gonna do it, you know, so the dog doesn't need to come in, because a lot of them will also surrender pets because they have medical conditions, and we're willing to help on that one.
Thank you. And then you probably also answered this. How many staff members do you have?
Right now, I have about 14 at the shelter.
14?
Yeah, 14 that takes care of the animal, but we are open 7 days a week from 8 o'clock to 8 p.m. So.
And ideally, how many staff would you want to be able to run a full shift?
At least for the shelter alone, we need at least 20. And then on the adoption side, we need at least 6. Right now, a
Was
lot
that
of.
20 additional 20 or 20 total for this
20
shelter?
total. So
Okay.
I am hiring at least 8 part-time and 2 full-time, just to add in. And these people will be trained also to do adoption and foster coordinating.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know Alderwoman Saunier had a follow-up question, so I want to give some space for that.
Don't hurt them.
I was just about to ask a question, but I can ask it here too. So you guys have an RFP with us, right? That's what your budget is through. So I just had a question about the legalities to give an increase. Would the contract have to go back out for bid before we could? That's my question around the legalities. If you all are a vendor, basically, and there's an RFP process, I just have questions about that, and you all may know that too, but.
That's actually why the RFP went out, because under Dr. Eccles, we were supposed to get a 3%.
Sorry, an RFP is request for proposal.
So we were supposed to get, in our old contract, a 3% increase every year, and Dr. Eccles did not give us that. So the RFP was to kind of get us in line with what was initially in the contract, that brought us up to where we were. But we were, in our old contract, we were supposed to get a 3% increase each year, and we weren't. As a former alderman, the health department was the department that got cut the most, and animal control got cut double.
I might still say it's still
Yeah,
true.
so we didn't get that, so because we were asking for that, the RFP had to go out because we were negotiating a different price on the contract.
So for these, if we were wanting to make changes, would that have to go through a process again?
No.
And because, and because you are RFP, well, I guess my question is, this year, did you get the 3%? Are you getting any increases for your staff?
We did get $256,000 increase, which it went from 694 every year in the last 4 years to 950. The budget I submitted is about 1.6, so that it can cover at least the actual costs that I spent last year just for staffing the Clark building alone. I covered all extra costs for staffing, for my donor relations, for my volunteer coordinators. Those are not included in the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I think Madam Chair, I think the question becomes, it's okay. I think it does, if there are going to be changes, right, could it be made an increase to the health department and then an additional allowance be made to that RFP? And does that legally require it to be rebid because that allowance maybe wasn't
That is my
suggested?
question.
I think that is, yeah, that is the
Right.
question. The other
So
question.
it's a legal question that
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in this room can definitively tell us just yet, so.
Correct.
I think it's
And
something
then-
for this committee to figure out.
Yeah.
Correct. And then the other question, of course, is related to ordinance 71591, which allocated $1 million to animal care and control in some regard. It's nothing short of shocking to me that you all, who are operating the city's animal shelter, were not communicated at all directly about this. There was no communication on the front end to determine how much money you needed, so that when that proposal for ARPA money was presented to the Board of Aldermen, you all were consulted on the front end of that. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I'm very surprised to hear that you all were unaware of that. How much of what you need could be covered by this, I think is certainly something that we should be aware of. And then, of course, Alderwoman Saunier brings up an excellent question with regards to legality of additional funding and that sort of thing. So it sounds like we have a little bit of work to do. As we all know, we're kind of put in an unfortunate position here at the Board of Aldermen to be presented a budget and have to parse through it within just a couple of weeks. There are so many facets of city government and so many functions that are funded through the $1.3 billion budget that it's nearly impossible to, but certainly the fact that you all run our city animal shelter is an incredibly important function. We do rely on you to be able to house animals in our community that don't have a house, don't have a home, don't have a forever home at least yet. So we really thank you for that. If you could follow up with that information via email related to the animals that are coming from our wards. I think we, at the very least, this committee will request that the health department and the administration communicate with you all, or communicate with us as well, about the intentions of the ARPA funds. And then we will need to do some homework and find out some answers about the legality of making sure that any additional funds that we are able to find would be able to go to you directly. Okay. And then, sure, go ahead, Alderwoman.
I'm just curious, again, I'm going back to the $1 million. And so I'm just curious, who gets it? Where is it? So we can make sure it goes to the right, area.
I think this is the first time they're hearing about the $1 million.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what we want to ask about, since Paul Payne gave us the ordinance and stuff. So that's some research we need to do to find out, okay, where is this $1 million at? Because it seems that they got the $1 million, it would help with the 50,000. Am I right?
Yes, certainly it would help.
I can,
Just
we'll
ask.
be able to get what we bid for.
Right, I'm like, it just seems like it, but it seems like you got it, but it's not there. So,
Yeah, I mean,
And so, yeah, and the.
our role really here is to okay the budget, to allocate the funding, and the rest of it is largely out of our hands. But, so we'll try to facilitate that certainly, but certainly $1 million would help with the $50,000 to
Yeah,
$50,000.
and if we move to a new facility, that would be nice to use to retrofit.
Sure, yeah, of course. Okay, well, thank you all, and feel free to share anything else that might be helpful to the committee.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up, we have our Recorder of Deeds. I'm gonna ask, that while you all sign up, get signed in, I'm gonna ask for a 3-minute recess. Thank you. We're resuming from our recess to hear from our Recorder of Deeds, Mr. Butler. And if you don't mind, I'll just reminding folks to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your department, how it's funded, and speak into the microphone.
Thank you. This is on. Awesome. I am Michael Butler, Recorder of Deeds for the City of St. Louis. Need anything more than that? No. So I want to thank you, Alderman Kara Spencer, for inviting me to present at the Budget and Public Employees Committee. And of course, thank you to all the other members of the committee for your presence and your service. I also want to recognize my staff in the office, from the Recorder of Deeds offices here, if you guys haven't met them before. We have with us our Deputy Recorder, Lucinda Frazier, is here. Our Human Resource Manager, Tim Person, is here. Our Information Systems Administrator, Glenn Bates, and our Technical Support Specialist, Information Systems Manager, Stephen Webb. And I would be remiss too if I didn't thank the Budget Director for being here too. You've been such help over the years. Thank you so much for all your help, and their staff for all the work that they do in their office to make things easy for all of us throughout this process. The Recorder of Deeds office is responsible for vital records keeping services to the public. The documents in our office touch virtually every resident in the city and their lives, and the most important moments in our citizens' lives intersect directly with our office. Our office is unique in that it's the only place in the state of Missouri where you can receive a birth record, marriage, death, land, and historical records all in one place, and with a single visit and from the same location. We are committed to providing our citizens with engaging, innovative, and user-focused services. Also, as keepers of history, we maintain nearly 250 years worth of history concerning the people and the properties of St. Louis, Missouri. Our biggest accomplishment so far has been the creation of the Sharon Quigley Carpenter Recorder's Assistance Center, named after the longest-serving recorder of deeds in the state of Missouri. And our new Recorder's Assistance Center, or what we like to call it a RAC, you may hear me say RAC for short during this presentation, it centralizes all of our retail services to our customers. And this means all of those that birth, marriage, death, and land records and historical records, all in one room that is new and innovative and looks more like a Sprint store than, in a sense, a government office. Moreover, we've increased our hours of operation and made the office more accessible with technology. For those citizens who can't make it to City Hall, we pride ourselves on online services. In 2019, within months of taking office, we upgraded our office's website and were able to allow citizens to order birth and death records online. By the end of 2020, we passed a new law in the state legislature allowing citizens to order their marriage license online. And last year, we launched an even newer interactive website. Our citizens can now safely and securely access birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, and so much more, all from the comfort of their home. And our website has improved navigation, instantly responds to smartphone and smart devices, and we believe that in 2023, you shouldn't have to go to City Hall to access your city government. When I took office in 2019, one of my first concerns was addressing a hostile and inefficient work environment. The citizens of St. Louis elected me to modernize the office and create efficiency, and I brought in experienced and proven professionals with new ideas. Since then, I'm proud to report that morale, productivity, and customer experience is at an all-time high. Our office has innovative processes, and we've overseen a 15% increase in the productivity. We've done this with actually less staff. We've decreased our FTEs from 37 to 34 over the years, and we are now generating more money into the general fund than we spend, having increased our annual revenue by $464,000 on average since FY20. We are proud to work for the city every day. Thank you again for allowing me to present to this committee, and I'm available for any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Since we are considering the budget here, we're just curious if you had any of the budget figures that you could share with us. I mean, and I know you distributed some information about some activities that you have planned, or had planned, I should say, that happened this year.
Yes.
Within the office. These are in the past, it seems like, but do you have any budget information for us about the income, the revenue generated? It looks like we have from our line item detail, the department has an annual budget this year of $3.2 million.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any of the budget figures that you could share with us?
Yes, I can, and I apologize. I thought you guys had that information already. You guys
We do in our book, yes.
Okay,
Usually we kind of go through the budget of a department, is kind
Okay.
of how we're, yes.
All right, are you looking for, so, our revenue, our expected revenue this year is $3.25 million.
What was that? Excuse me, I didn't see that.
$3.2 million
For the revenue?
for revenue,
Okay.
yes.
And so that's what we've got budgeted for your expenditures, correct? 3.2 million, so it looks like money in, money out.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
So our salaries have stayed similarly flat. So in '21, we had about 1.9 million in actual salary figures. In this year, we've had a proposed budget of about 2 million, 2.015, so $2,015,000. Our biggest increase, as you guys have probably seen, it comes from, I feel sorry for the budget office and budget director, from employment retirement plan and medical insurance are our hugest increases for over the years. We went from about $218,000 in '21 to $298,000, so about $80,000 increase. And employment retirement has increased just even over $30,000 from last year, and from about $147,000 to $343,000 this year, so about a $60,000 increase. We have, I want to, if I can direct you guys to office services down on our contractual and other services, our biggest line item in our budget is $270,000 for office services. That covers all of our software, well, half was about our software payments to a software company called Fiddler that we contract with to do all that's been a 30-year contract, do all of from our in-house to our external software services, but also our payments to the Department of Health and Senior Services, some of the payments to them where our partnership with them for birth records, we pay the state to access the birth records on a certain rate, and then we charge citizens and customers for that access in order to generate revenue for the city. With that, yeah, we're about flat on our budget this year.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Butler. The question that I had was, on office supplies, it was 25,000, then it jumped to 32.
Yes, ma'am.
Was it the cost of the product or?
So office supplies here on, so I think the first thing we've added, so from when you're looking at it at the bottom here, I'm trying to think of the difference between our internal services and our office supplies line item. Can I answer that question first by talking about internal services? So if you see we have actuals on internal services here, which we were over every year for the budget, and we had a budget drop only 500. A lot of that had to do with our phone services and internal mail services. For office supplies, that is varied throughout the year. You see for our actual from 21, it went from 21,000 in FY22 went to 10,000. We've increased it to 32,000 this year, I think, to cover some of the expenses that normally would be in internal services and or communication services. So I wish I could give you a better answer on that on why our office. There's not been an increase in office supplies. I think we definitely seen an increase in paper costs, okay, as well as an increase in paper costs. What was the other one? And we ordered a new printer, but other than that, nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy.
Okay. And so you did go over the internal services?
Yes,
How
yeah.
that was an increase, right. Okay, so those was the two things that I had looked at. And the only other thing that is no pun to you or your department, but I just think that, and I'm taking it for me, I'm not for nobody else. You have events, and I don't know nothing about these events till after the fact. So I just think that's something I think your department can do better on, communicating to let people know. The Asian American event, the only way I knew, I happened to be here late, and I heard all this noise, and I was like, what are they doing? I was like, another event I didn't even know about. So I'm just asking, in the future, when you all have things, if you could let us know, because we would like to support you all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Yes, you, Chair.
Right.
What's going on? Okay. So I guess I'm chairing now.
Yeah.
Ms. Alderwoman Schweitzer, do you have anything?
Thank you so much. I see that you have 3 less positions requested this year than last. Is that I can see that it's for,
Are you talking to the mic, Candace?
am I not?
No.
Well, I don't want to get too close because then it makes that awful popping sound. I think I see 3 less positions requested this year than last year, and it looks like that is recorder, clerk 3, recorder, cashier representative, just positions that you haven't been able to fill and you're cutting or?
No, also, as the city has improved its how can I say its internal systems, how can I say those positions have been unavailable to us for a couple years now. And I think the system is catching up on that. We are 1 position down from 2 years ago, but quite frankly, if your question is, we've reduced our office from 37 FTEs to 34 over the past 4 years, and those are the correct positions that we've reduced.
Okay.
Yes, but that's right. This document does show that we had
3 this year.
37 possible occupied positions in FY23. We never had more than 34 employees last year.
So it's just reflecting what's accurate
Correct.
for what you have.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Let me see if I have any other, I see 60,000 marriage licenses expected this year as opposed to 93 for less people getting married?
Think
Less
so.
there? Okay.
You said 60,000?
Yeah, so in the revenue estimates page, marriage licenses it says $93,000, revised estimate for fiscal year '23, and then the official estimate for '24 was 60,000.
I got you. $60,000.
So
Yes,
there's
okay.
just a lot
I thought
less.
you said 60,000 marriage licenses. I was like,
And
oh,
that would be crazy.
that would have
No,
been a lot.
I meant dollars.
Yes.
In marriage licenses,
Yes.
93,000 to 60,000. Is
Yeah.
that just less people? What
Just a
that
few
about?
less. So we predicted so in FY22, we had about 2,900 marriage licenses. We're predicting about 2,414. So yeah, it seems to be slowing. Our land records and our birth records our death records are increasing a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah, it slowed by quite a bit over since the end of COVID. I think we had a bump after COVID, and that's what it seems to be, and that's kind of leveling back out.
Well, I got married last year, and I used your office's services, and it was great. I had a great experience. We enjoyed it. Everyone was very nice and congratulatory. So please thank your staff for me for making the experience so great.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Those are all
I
my
will do.
questions.
Will do.
Alderwoman Zonier.
I really don't have any specific questions. I would just maybe like to hear a little bit more about your Recorder Assurance Center.
Awesome. Yes. So our Recorder Assistance Center is based in room 127. Customers have loved it. It has been raved by a lot of folks, the fact that you can go to that office and get everything all at once. Also, it's very comfy. We like to make it kind of like a Sprint store in a sense where you can sit down and we have what we call convertible counters where folks can walk up and make their request, sit down, have a cup of coffee, relax, and we get a birth certificate within 5 minutes. The other thing is, the biggest thing with the Core Assistance Center is that in a lot of our offices, you guys might have heard, we have cashier departments. We separated the cash from the actual service to where, in our office at least, you had to order a service, walk over into the cashier department and pay for it, and then walk back over to where you ordered the service and actually receive that service. We've done away with that. We've actually bonded our employees that are in the Recorder Assistance Center so they can handle transactions and folks don't have to go into another room in order to pay. And that's probably been the biggest improvement in service that we've had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you, Mr. Recorder, for being here and your staff as well.
Thank you all.
I don't have any questions, more of a comment, very similar to when Collector of Revenue was in, these county offices. It's unique in St. Louis that we have like these county city offices. And coming from Jeff City, learning how antiquated city government is, one thing I appreciate about what you've done with the office is really brought it up to the 21st century. I think you and the leadership team has thought outside the box of how to make the recorder's office more accessible to the people. I know since you got in, that was one of the first things you said you was going to do as the youngest elected official in City Hall, at least in the citywide offices.
Got it.
And you've done it. If it's been, like you say, the Sharon Carpenter's office, paying homage to her, I think the first recorder, and making it where people can come in and get access, but don't have to go through this antiquated process to be able to get the documents they need. I like more the idea of a Verizon store than Sprint store, but you know, whatever, whichever one. But I do really want to commend you on that, and I know there's probably better ways that we can communicate. If there's any events in the future going on, I don't mind being the liaison to let my colleagues know about it. But I think these events that you've been hosting for several years now it may be a little outside the scope of the recorder, but recorder office is about preserving the history of our city, and what you're doing with acknowledging a lot of cultures that are in our city and uplifting them and uplifting the people that are doing the work to make sure that those histories aren't erased, I think is just another level of, I think, intentionality that people don't always maybe expect out of an office. So I just appreciate what you're doing and what your team is doing, and whatever way I could be a help, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you for all your help over the years, too, as well. Thank you. If I were to mention about our cultural events as well, our Heritage Month events, they don't come from the general fund at all. The payment, the budget for those events actually come from our technology, preservation, and miscellaneous account. A small portion of each of our customers' payments, most of it goes to the general revenue fund. A small portion goes to a separate account for us to improve the office, as well as use it for expenses in the office. So about $1 a transaction goes to a separate fund in the treasurer's office that we were able to use. All of our improvements to our office, the Recorder Assistance Center, was not paid through the general revenue fund, was paid through the saving up of that fund, similar to how Alderman would do with the the capital improvement fund you had in your wards, as well as those events are paid for through a separate fund through the county offices, through the treasurer's office. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Recorder. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Okay, so thank you. We really appreciate, know that you're a county office, and so operate a little bit outside of the city government, but as our matter of due diligence for the Budget and Public Employees Committee, we appreciate you coming before us and sharing your budget with us.
Appreciate you. Thank you, guys. You have a nice.
With that, we had two other orders of business which were on the public agenda, but not on the agenda before us here this morning. Board Bill 47 and Resolution, I believe, 23. With that being said, I think we need to make sure that we hear Board Bill 47 today, if possible. Respectfully, the Budget Director's here today to speak on that. So we're recognizing we may need a small recess to accommodate somebody from personnel to come before us. So with that, I think what we'll do is recess until about, do we have an estimated time of arrival? No, I mean, really, these were two issues that were requested by the Personnel Department, and so I would appreciate somebody from personnel attending. So with that, I think what we'll do is take a short recess until hopefully 11:30. I'm without any insight here. We'll reconvene at 11:30. Thank you. Boom. Okay, thank you. Okay, the Budget and Public Employees Committee is now back after a second recess. Yes, okay. We are going to be taking up Board Bill 47 here in just a moment. Board Bill 47, and I am the sponsor of this, so I'm going to take it up. Vice Chair Boyd, would you take over the hearing, please?
Yes. You just sent it? You just-
So what is?
47.
Board Bill 47. And I apologize, not everybody has it. It's a 509-page bill, so we're going to be working with this electronically here. Board Bill 47 is just a pay bill, really. This went through our Civil Service Commission, I think, about 3 weeks ago. Essentially, even though it's a very long bill, what this really just does is kind of outline everything we've been going through department by department in our budget. This is the pay bill, like I said, that was agreed upon by the commission, and has already been, to my understanding, accounted for in the current city budget as we have been considering it. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our personnel director, and I've also recognized that we have Nancy Cross from the mayor's office here, as well as our budget director, to answer any specific questions about the pay bill. With that, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to the personnel department to just briefly give an overview.
Thank you. My name is John Understall. I'm a deputy director in the Department of Personnel. Probably the most familiar with this bill. I did take part in the writing process. So if you have any questions, I should be able to answer those for you. Board Bill 47 is the civil service pay bill. So that is all the civil service positions. It does not include all of those other offices, the sheriff's office and some of those county offices. They would not be part of this. So the bill mimics, it's a lot like the last year's bill, for those of you who are familiar with that. That bill gave 3% across the board increases for all civil service employees. So basically, once this bill is passed and signed off by the mayor, everybody's position in the pay range would automatically be increased by 3%. It also has a 1.5% merit increase within the civil service system that would accompany a rating. If the employee gets a successful or highly successful rating, they would get that 1.5 increase at that time. So as was stated already, this was all accounted for within the budget process. There are a few additional changes for the general schedule. There's a couple classifications that the pay grades were raised by one pay grade: liquor control officer, paralegal, personal property appraiser 1 and 2. Those are requests that we get through appointing authorities throughout the year. The only time we can do grade changes is with the new ordinance, so that's just some maintenance within our plan. And then 4 classes that are deleted that we no longer use within the various civil service departments. On top of the general schedule, there is increases within the public safety, police, and fire. Those are the biggest increases that you'll see in the bill. That ranges between 8% and 13%, depending on the classification. These were all done through the union negotiation process, and we did get all of the unions to sign off on all of these agreements. So we did reach agreements this year before the ordinance with every single union. So that's the positive there. But depending on the position and the step, it's kind of staggered increases, which more going up towards the higher steps, the people that have had more seniority, because the way our steps are kind of laid out, those people got lower increases before, so we need to boost those up to kind of make it more even, more like the regular schedule. We also have within the ordinance, the pay bill, allowing people that are at the maximum to also get the 3%, so we have a provision for that, same thing that we did last year. Other things of note: overtime for police sergeants, we did include, before it was just the time worked that would include for computation of overtime. We added vacation and comp time to also count as hours worked. That's to put them in line with everybody else within the civil service system. And then fire, when we went to the Juneteenth holiday, the fire people in the fire schedule just got 8 hours. They work 24-hour schedules, and it's become an issue that they got time that they couldn't even use for that holiday. So We added the additional hours to allow for them to have the full holiday off, so to make 24. And then the final thing is there is a provision that talks about if the police would go out from under our control, that we wouldn't be responsible for them. So it just reiterates a point that would be true regardless. So I don't know if you have any questions with those specific things or anything else that was within the bill. Sure. So the way we wrote this bill was June 18th is when our last, that'll be our first pay period in the new fiscal year. So if we can get this through by then, and the mayor signs it within that first pay period, then this would be a timely bill. So the provision's in there to allow for it to be signed within the actual first pay period to make sure that we do get this in time, and hopefully there's no delays through the process here.
John, just to clarify, in order to make that happen, this has to get through committee this week, second read at the Board of Aldermen, and then we'll have to suspend the rules the following week to make sure we get this passed into the mayor's office. Excuse me?
By July 1st or before ENA?
This was already considered by the Civil Service Commission, so we need to get this through committee this week, put it before the full board on Friday for second reading, and then the following week we will hopefully, if the board considers this well, not only perfect it, but third read and final passage so that we can get it passed into the mayor's office and signed by the mayor before the end of that pay period that starts on June 18th.
Got it.
Just explaining the timing here and why we're considering this here this morning and trying to get this through. So we're prepared. Okay. With that, I'll also invite Budget Director Paul Payne to speak on the fiscal impact as it relates to the current budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. I do have, if you don't have copies, I brought the cost estimates related to the pay bill that I could leave with you.
Thank you, Paul. It's a little bit of paper.
Budget as we've been considering it.
Oh, yes, I'll get through that. So what you have before you, and as you recall from the budget presentation, I mentioned the largest increase that you have in the proposed budget is the pay bill itself. And as Mr. Understall just discussed, there's a number of provisions in it. The non-uniform regular employees are allocated a 3% across-the-board increase starting at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then we have a merit increase that is proposed at 1.5%, which is similar to what we had this current fiscal year, and that's awarded on the anniversary date of an employee's date of hire. Now, specifically, that one, which is, and I've broken this out between general funds, special funds, and then total. You'll know we don't typically budget for the 1.5 simply because it's a partial year, and if you work out 1.5%, that becomes less than 1%, and so we expect departments can usually operate around that. But we do have in the budgets each year, and you'll see in your line item TO personnel schedules, an amount allocated for the 3%. Now, with police and fire uniform, as was discussed, that's a bigger increase. That was an 8 to 13% increase in the pay matrix, and that's estimated respectively at $9.7 million and $5.5 million, respectively, between the police and fire uniform departments. And also associated with that, because this is a significant increase more than it would be in a regular year, we've also allocated an estimate for the impact on the pension systems for both police and fire. And that's an item that was included in the use tax budget specifically. You'll see that, and that was at $2.65 million for police and $675,000 for fire. So the total estimated cost associated with that would be $26.4 million in the civil service pay bill that you have before you. Now, also was mentioned was that there will be separate bills for different elected officials that are not covered by this pay plan. Now, typically, although not always, but typically we usually advise that they follow the pattern of the civil service pay bill. So the numbers I've got on here would be those numbers if they are at the same rate as everyone else. So you see the non-uniform regular employees at 3%, an allowance of 1.5% for the merit, and then, of course, Circuit Court already submitted their budget with the amounts in there, and so that was 4.5%. So that was another 2.1 million. So overall, if both general funds, special funds, civil service, non-civil service, all funds would be about $28.5 million. And again, in the budget, it was 25.4 simply because I didn't count the courts because they were already in the base budget, and we don't budget for the merit. But other than that, everything else is in the proposed budget you have before you. And that's pretty much the summary of all the costs associated with the plan.
Is that it, sponsor? So are we ready for questions? Okay, so we're ready for questions.
Madam Vice Chair, I'm happy to take questions or welcome anybody else to answer questions about the bill.
Okay. Alderwoman Switzer.
Thank you so much. You know, I've had some folks in my ward who aren't represented by a union reach out and wonder about their jobs and you know, whether they're able to move up into different classifications and how that process works if they're not represented by a union. So I would just love to hear more about how I should advise folks, you know, who I should help to talk to, how that works.
I'll invite the personnel department to come up and speak to that.
It's kind of a layered question that you're asking there, but in general, I think probably refer them to me. If there's any classification, pay issues, that would be under me. And we do field questions a lot from employees, but certainly refer them to me. Then we can, anything that touches this ordinance, refer them to me and I can help them.
And how many employees in the city of St. Louis are represented percentage-wise by a union and how many aren't?
That I do not know. I mean, we have a lot of unions, but you know, it's still a good portion that are not represented, which is why we were really the last 2 years kind of moving towards this across-the-board format that we hadn't done for 20 years to make sure that those employees are getting increases as well. I do think long-term we'll be looking at the structure of our ordinance and the structure of those matrices as well, but yeah, I mean, the 3% on top of just the merit gets people money quicker and raises up those minimums to try to be more competitive.
Can you talk a little bit about the pay increases, especially for folks who've been here for a while? You know, their increase has gone up, their pay has gone up, but when new folks come in and are hired at a higher amount than they were when they came in, and how long it takes to catch up, I think. You know, how does that work with in this bill or when you've been in negotiations in terms of making sure folks don't have to be here for 30 years before they're at the top of the pay or you know, that kind of.
So there's mechanisms within the ordinance for appointing authorities to address those situations through request to the Director of Personnel. So if we have a long-term employee who, you know, doesn't feel like they're keeping up and is looking for other jobs and there's threat of losing them, we have retention rates that we can establish. And within the negotiation process, we've done that in some of our classes to make sure those people at those higher rates or those higher years of service aren't compressed with those people coming in. So we are trying to address those issues. I do think it will be addressing them for a while because we've had so much compression. But yeah, we can do those through individual requests when appointing authorities ask those to be looked at.
Okay, so again, send people to you.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you can always send people to me.
Sounds good. Then, let's see. So reading in here, there seems to be a lot about retention incentives and bonuses that people can give their departments. Is that all relatively new?
No, the only changes you might see highlighted in there with the bonuses is kind of changing the terminology of the word bonus. We want to look at those as incentives because this is not, you know, you get into some state statute violations when you talk about retroactive pay and bonuses. So we want those to be incentive programs that we establish in advance to give people compensation for doing additional things or having additional certifications. So that was kind of a cleanup on my part to make that language a little better because when you see bonus, you think, oh, this is some sort of payment that's coming out. you know, we don't want to have anything harken back to that retroactive pay.
Got it. Have anything else? How is that accounted for in the budget? I know the 1.5% would just be absorbed by the departments, but is that the same situation with retention incentives, that they'd have to just find money in their budgets?
Paul, I think, would be the one to really speak to that.
Some of that has been accommodated, for instance, this year when they started doing the refuse
Right,
hiring
our
and stuff.
body should.
And most of it, typically what you're going to find is they're initiating this incentive because they haven't been able to fill the positions.
Right.
Well, if you're not filling the positions, that means you'd have salary funds. And so they utilize some of those unused salary funds to get the incentive to bring up the hiring. And so that's typically how it would roll out.
This is sort of a kind of a question that goes along with that.
Sure.
One of the things that I am struggling with in looking at the budget is not knowing how much each department has left after the end of fiscal year 23. I know we don't have those numbers until really the end of June.
Right.
But it makes it hard to think about how we'd reassign
Correct.
any funds. So I'd love to talk to you more offline about that, because it's sort of like, where is this money coming from? You know, I don't understand where this money's coming from. So that's helpful. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions. Thanks.
You might want to stay up there.
Uh-oh.
Sonia, Alderwoman Sonia.
Hello. So I have some questions, but first, I just really want to, since this is the first time that the personnel department has been in front of us, you know, a lot of the departments, I would say the common themes have been the antiquatedness of systems and processes, and obviously understaffing, but a lot of them have referenced over and over again how you've been someone good to work with, how there's been some improvement in some processes already, and I know we recently changed you know, to Oracle and other things like that, and I've just heard really good things consistently about just you and your team and the work, and I think you all's department is going to be one of the most important ones as we're constantly talking about city services and what we're paying folks. I think obviously all of that's going to fall under what do we invest in our people who are doing the work, and that's going to show in the work that we get to our constituents and our residents. So I just wanted to give you your kudos and flowers for that, and I know it's not an easy task, so however we can work together, I'm sure that this budget, the committee's happy to do that with you. Some of my questions may be known by folks, and I'm new, so I may just not know, but I'm a big fan because I know people in the public are watching and probably don't even know what I know. So I saw something in here about the commuting allowance. Maybe you could speak a little bit more to that. I saw it was kind of capped at $180 bi-weekly, but I didn't even know we had anything like that. So maybe just more information about that.
Yeah, the commuting allowance is something for individuals who may work at the airport or the water facilities that aren't within the city of St. Louis. And because we have the residency rule, or we traditionally had the residency rule where you have to live within the city, it's to kind of make up for people that have to work off-site outside of those bounds, that extra driving.
And then again, this may be tied to you all, may not. I was looking through here, and this is obviously a pay bill. I'm still trying to understand. So obviously, every department comes in front of us, and they're like talking about what they need in their raises. But then that happens. But then there's also pay bills. When is a pay bill necessary versus when does the department just come in front of us and present their budget with what they would like for their staff and employees?
Not exactly sure how to answer that. I mean, the pay bill is going to govern all of the pay processes and all of the matrices of what those standard increases are. I think mostly within the budget, you're talking about bodies or money you need for materials and things like that. But
I think Kara.
I'll try to jump in a little bit because it's a little bit complicated, and I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this, but the question was really related to, so we've got a pay bill, which considers how much we're paying employees, and we've also got a budget, and we've also got the departments who are asking for raises for their employees and specific allocations and things like that. So it's sort of complicated because the personnel department isn't necessarily in charge of the budget or considering those other pieces. But Alderwoman Saulnier's question is a salient one, and one, so how do all these pieces fit in? And it does seem a little bit backwards for us to be considering a pay bill after we're already considering the budget for departments and specific asks by different departments. So, and again, I don't know that the budget director is the best person to answer this either, but I think but you're welcome to kind of weigh in.
I told you don't.
Question, but
See, I said don't sit down.
no, it's a good question, but it's basically it's coming together all at the same time, because obviously you have to have a budget by July 1 of each year. So while we are meeting with departments, there was also discussions that the Department of Personnel and the mayor's office having with the unions and negotiating the pay bill, and some of that is dependent upon each other. So for instance, question may be from the Department of Personnel, well, how much have we got to work with, basically? And it might not be exact, but it might give you, we might have an order of magnitude. So for instance, in this year, well, I think we could probably swing something comparable to what we had this year. And so they work with that. And in some areas, they may say, oh, but we need this for additional incentives or such, and then that's fine. But other years, for instance, when we've been actually in a recession and our revenues are going down, say, we've got to hold the line. We don't have any additional revenues to allocate. And so the negotiations take a different turn. And it's mostly communication when we get into that early part of the calendar year, when we're both starting the budget process as well as they're starting or trying to go through the negotiation process, where they come to some conclusion about what we are able to afford looking into the next fiscal year.
So you're saying, what I'm getting from what you're saying is it kind of just depends on how conversations and negotiations, sorry, on how conversations and negotiations, like I guess I'm asking, every time we see a pay bill, that means that this is separate from what is in the original budget, or will people come before us and they're just, I'm just trying to, I'm still not clear on when, is there any criteria in place for when a pay bill needs to happen versus when it doesn't? And I'm obviously specific to this budgeting process. Is there anything that, I mean, I'm sure it's not just for me, and maybe this is something to talk about in the future, but it's a lot of moving pieces around one common thing at the same time. And sometimes the processes seem, from where I'm saying, I'm very new, but sometimes it seems very separate, or like certain communication hasn't happened, even though all of the discussion is around the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious, is there any guiding criteria to help with that?
Like, for instance, when somebody presented their budget, and then they said that they were going to present a pay bill.
Right.
And we looked and said, so why are you presenting a pay bill if the raise is in the budget?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, and hopefully that pay bill is consistent with what they have in the budget. And if it's not consistent within the budget, then the question would be, well, then where are you going with this?
Right, and that's what it was. It was more than what was in the budget.
And that's a legitimate question.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Alderwoman Saulnier, is that, well, the budget, separate from the pay bill, needs to be adopted by July 1, right?
Yeah.
So there is no deadline for a pay bill. However, you do have employees who are depending on getting their pay. Right. So, I mean, you could say, hey, we're passing the pay bill in the fall. Well, you could do that, but then you've got a bunch of employees saying, hey, we've got negotiated agreements that say we're supposed to be getting a pay increase come July. So they are definitely related in that the largest cost of our budget is personnel, but there's a different process. The negotiating process on a pay bill is, as the Director of Personnel would tell you, is you negotiate with the unions, they come to an agreement, they go to the Civil Service Commission, and then that proposed bill comes to this Board of Aldermen, whether you go up or down. Right. But there's a separate charter process for the budget. Now, they are related, but they don't necessarily have to move in tandem. But when you want to plan on making sure that the budget reflects whatever the pay bill's got, there's got to be some coordination between the two. And so that's where we're at today.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful because I was curious to what Alderwoman Boyd said. Like, let's say that a bill comes before us, that's a pay bill that was approved, but it's completely different than what's in the budget. I'm just like, how can that happen if it's the same money, unless there's some separate pools that I don't know about?
Well, that would be a question of whatever the proposer is that brings that bill before you.
Okay.
Okay. And we did ask that, Paul.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. My last question, again, may be for us, may not. I'm curious about our paternal leave policies for our staff and our city.
For your staff or for the city?
One, I'm curious, is it paternal leave or is it just maternal leave? For staff, really, for city workers. Is it just maternal leave? Is it paternal leave in general for all parents? I'm just curious about that.
It would apply to both, yeah.
And is there a window, like some policies outline every employee gets 6 weeks, every employee is eligible for it. Do you know what the time period is?
I don't have the policy. We do have an administrative regulation, and we could give that to you that would outline all the criteria. It is a pretty detailed policy. So I wouldn't want to speak without in front of me, but yeah, I mean, it is all out there, and this is all stuff that's published online and available to employees.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. First, I want to say thank you, Deputy Director and Director, for being here. Also, I've heard just tremendous things about what your department is doing. I heard you guys went from having some typewriters, which was absolutely, don't have the word for it, that in 2023, the city was still using typewriters. So that's why when I talk to people, I'm like, this city is antiquated, and this board is going to push it up to the 21st century with the help of a lot of directors. So I appreciate the work that y'all doing to personnel. Is so, this mic is horrible. Speaking of antiquated, personnel has such I think, critical role, especially as we're down employees, and make sure that we try to get more people in the job. And I know that you and your team are looking at creative ways to bring people back into the workforce in the city of St. Louis. So appreciate, like I say, Madam Director, the work that's happening. To piggyback on Alderwoman Sonya's question with the maternal paternity leave, if you could get that information to us, that would be helpful, because I know when I was in the state legislators, that was a concern with some of our law enforcement officers, and something that we can do on a state level, but on a local level, and concerns that they didn't have enough time to be out to take care of their child to be able to come back into the workforce. And then the other question is for Paul, our director. Should just listen to Madam Chairwoman and not, I guess you're getting your break in, so you ain't got to keep getting up and down. But I want to revisit the pay bill a little bit, also being new, to make sure I'm clear. So we are aware that there has been one bill filed so far for a pay increase for the Collector Revenue's Office, and potentially another one for the Sheriff's Department. Have those departments communicated with you or ENA to make sure if those go into effect and are not representing the budget that they will, and I know their office is separate because of city county, but will it affect us?
Well, in terms of the collector revenue, as I'm sure they've provided, they are a fee office, so they're not part of the budget. So they are by statute required to stay within the allocated commission fees in which they collect. So they don't come before you in terms of the budget necessarily. I mean, I know they came before you in terms of just giving general context, but there's not a line item budget to where a pay bill would be specified. Now, in terms of the sheriff, they do have that line item budget, and I know what has been assumed in the budget you have before you. It's the same as the civil service. I mean, it would be the 3% that we have allocated. So
if they said they had a 10% pay increase, would that?
I would say that'd be problematic from a budget standpoint.
Even an additional 3% pay increase.
Yes, the fair question in that,
No, I'm saying on, so.
On top of the 3%.
On top of it. So
Yep.
it sounds like the sheriff's department has, that we know there's a 3%, but they have an additional percentage. Now, who knows what that looks like, because we haven't seen the legislation, but there's additional raise that they're asking. Would that put us out of a balanced budget?
well, yeah, I would say the fair question is, how do you fit this within the budget allocation that you have before you?
And that question was asked.
Got it. Okay. That is my only question. Thank you, Director.
There you go, sitting down again. I have a question, more clarity. When, because I know that we have been talking to unions for a while. I get that. And I want to say the last 6 months, we've been constantly talking to unions from all departments. Am I correct?
I have not, but I imagine that the personnel department has, yes.
Okay. And so you all finally came up with, when was it decided when the raises would, when you all negotiated, when did that complete?
So we meet with each of the union groups separately, except for a trades group that has most of the trades groups together. We were still getting agreements a week prior to us introducing it at the commission. So we'd reached some back in March, and then it was kind of progressing from there. It's just a lot of different union groups to have to reach individual agreements with. So the last one was probably right up until we introduced it at the commission.
And so it was introduced at the commission when?
I don't have the exact date. I think it was
About
May 26th.
Nancy got the exact date, huh? May 26th, okay. Because that's what I was looking at, because I was like, and so we're just getting it, so that's why we're just now getting it. Okay, so could I get more clarity on the community allowance or the community that what Alderwoman Sonia had asked about?
The commuting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's for, it's limited to those individuals who work at a facility that isn't within the city limits, but then they're still held to, as civil service employees, having to live within the city limits. So the people at airport are the main people that would have approved community allowances for. There's also the water plant that's out in the county, the people there. So it's a very limited group of people.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. So, okay, their jobs are not within the city per se, they're somewhere else.
Right, it's looking at it as a
Okay.
hardship because they have to live one place and work somewhere else and travel.
Okay,
To and from.
and then I think the other question that I had is when, because I keep hearing it a lot with employees, they're working in positions that they're really not in that position, they're filling in that position. So are they being paid while they're working in those positions?
It sort of depends. There's mechanisms for them to be paid if the appointed authority makes a request to the director and says they're temporarily filling in for this position, can they get pay? So there's mechanisms within that pay bill that would allow the director to approve that. So some of them are. I think some of them are progressions of duties, so they may not actually be filling a position, they just may be doing things that the employee feels is outside of what their regular job would be. In those cases, we can study their jobs and potentially reallocate them to something else if we get requests for those job studies. But each case is kind of a little different. A lot of times it boils down to what is actually supposed to be part of that job. And those questions can come to us as well to determine, are you really working beyond your classification, or is this just incidental duties that really your position's evolving through time? Like the technology improvements, that's changed a lot of clerical positions, but it still would be considered part of their job, even if they're doing their job a little differently. So depending on the case, those are all things that we could look at, and we encourage appointed authorities to make these requests when they are looking to fill some of those positions temporarily, to look at we can do some sort of differential pay.
And I think what the challenge is, as Alderman Aldridge said, our city is so in the dark in regards to processes and procedures and policies and how things are done. And so this is something before this administration, people are working in positions, supervisory positions, are not being paid for those positions. And so me coming from corporate world, that's not okay.
Right.
And I think the employees don't feel comfortable enough to address it because of the atmosphere that has been in the past. So that's what we're working with. So when they do call me or talk to me about it, now I'll say, well, you need to call personnel, I said, because that's not what I do. But I think they're frustrated or either they're intimidated because they feel like in the past when they do it, nothing happens. So I'm just curious of how we are addressing that to ensure that these employees feel like they're going to be listened to, and then if they can be helped, at least just say, well, right now we can't do this, but we could probably do this.
Yeah.
And so I just, I'm a hard advocate for our employees because I always thought that they always got the short end of the stick. And so I never wanted where personnel makes them feel like they can't come there. And I know it's going to take time because everybody's new. But, if it's some way you all can figure it out to promote employees to feel like we do, welcome whatever issues you have, just let us know what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, been pretty quiet. So I kind of wanted to.
Identify yourself.
Ma'am?
You have to identify yourself.
I'm sorry. Good morning. I'm Sonia Jenkins Gray, Director of Personnel for the City of St. Louis. And thank you. Your comments are relevant and very important to the Department of Personnel, and so that's why I wanted to respond to those. And I agree with you. All of our employees that work for the city should feel comfortable and believe that they have an avenue to address issues as they come up, regardless of whether they're paid or any of those types of things. And so we do have administrative regulations in place that are with the process that is supposed to address those types of things and issues. And the responsibility to handle that initially begins with the appointing authorities. But in the event that the appointing authorities do not handle it, then the Department of Personnel is an avenue that they can reach out. We do require, though, that they be able to provide us with documentation, because you can imagine the number of grievances, et cetera, that we receive within the personnel department. But many of them have reached my office, and I have been involved directly with them in helping to have them resolved. So if they believe that there is not resolution, they can always reach out directly to the Department of Personnel as well as to my office, and we will ensure that they receive an answer or at least guidance on what they should do.
Okay, and so I guess my issue, and like I said, me coming from corporate world, I know how that works, and probably in all fairness, that's where you are.
Mm-hmm.
But the lines before you get so muddy, by the either it doesn't get to you, or the employees just feel like they have no recourse, nobody will help them, and so and I can talk to you later about it, but it's several employees that's come to me and was like, I said, no, go through the protocol. Don't just hop to me. Go to your immediate supervisor, then go to the person that's over them, then go to the person. I said, but make sure you document everything that goes on because you need that paper trail. And then they'll come back, well, I did, but nothing happened. I was like, okay. So I just don't want it to be where employees feel like their voices are heard. And you're right, it is a lot of people that have grievances. Some of them, they've done things and they just don't want to admit, yeah, I messed up. And it's okay. But we have to send a message to our employees that we're listening, good or bad, and sometimes you just need redirection.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And to help with that, one of the things that we're doing with our frontline supervisors and our appointing authorities is giving them the training that they need to manage and lead people.
because I don't believe that in the past that we've probably done it as consistently as we needed to. So that's one of the programs that we're looking at developing now, is a leadership and supervisory training course, so that we can teach our supervisors how to handle difficult conversations, how to handle, you know, a number of things that they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So our focus and our goal, of course, is our people, and giving everybody the resources and the tools that they need to be successful.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else have anything else before the sponsor closes?
I had one more thing. It might just be me lifting it up. I don't know if this it might not be I don't think this is a question that could be answered. Maybe something I'd just like to see. I think kind of ties to Alderwoman Boyd's point. I've also heard from and seen myself just a lot of concerns. You know, Paul Payne is a great example. He's worked here for 16 years. He has a plethora of information, so much knowledge, and I think folks like that are in each department. But I've been wondering, like, but maybe the people, I guess my question is about making sure that there's folks who are prepared to step up in leadership as those folks may, you know, step out or move on to other roles. Because I've heard a concern from some just departments about, you know, there's a head who knows everything, but kind of because we don't have systems in place, it's relied on the individual to know it. And if that person is out on vacation, the whole department has to stop, you know, or pause. Certain things literally can't be done because there's just one person who knows how to really do that function. So I just wanted to, like, lift that up.
Oh, and thank you for that, Alderwoman Saunier. I am in collaboration with the mayor's office now, and we're having conversations around succession planning. Because we do have an aging workforce and people are going to be retiring, and who do we have in place to be able to step up when they're gone. So those conversations are happening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I don't know how many years Mr. Payne's been with us, but I
Oh, sorry.
I think it's
did I cut
probably
your
double
time?
what you suggested,
Oh,
but I don't
30
know.
years. Older than me. I'm 27. You've been here
35.
Sorry.
Okay, 35
Well,
years.
made an even better example.
I just wanted to clarify, but yeah, no. And I also just wanted to mention too, I mean, I'm grateful that the budget director did bring this cost estimate on these raises. Just for clarity, we don't have a fiscal note. This was reminded again by our financial analyst, because the pay bill as considered was considered in the formation of the budget. So passing this pay bill will not impact the budget as we have before us. So the fiscal note is essentially zero as it pertains to the budget as we're considering. It's a little confusing because, as we've pointed out, lots of things are coming together at the same time. So, you know, I do appreciate that we're providing a pay increase as a part of our budget, and also want to recognize that the county officers, non-civil service departments are provided an increase in accordance with the civil service. So as we consider those moving forward, just be aware that what we're providing for our city employees, we're already providing for those other folks as a matter of the budget. So. Recognizing that in agreement with our unions and our city employees, there is an expectation to receive their pay increase starting on the June 18th payroll. So we are a little bit pressed for time to get this done. I would therefore ask for favorable consideration of the Budget and Public Employees Committee, and that we pass Board Bill 47 with the due pass recommendation to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Second.
I was like, Madam Clerk,
I want to know who you gave the second to.
Madam Clerk, could you
No, I'm
please
messing
call
with
the
you.
roll?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have passed Board Bill 47 with a due pass recommendation. Thank you so much to our Personnel Department for making sure that our Director and John for coming here to make sure that we had all of our questions answered. Thank you, Budget Director Paul Payne, for being here to answer all of our questions related to this pay bill, and we're excited to provide those pay increases to our city employees. Our last item on the agenda today is the resolution for the committee. I don't necessarily want to take a vote before. I just wanted to formally present the first draft of our Budget and Public Employees resolution, kind of guiding our actions for the committee. I think it is important. I want to give some credit to the President of the Board for encouraging each committee to have a set of guidelines for each committee. I want to formally ask members of the committee to kind of read over this and provide any feedback that you may have. I do want the committee to be collaborative as we move through this year, recognizing that we have some threats to our city's largest source of income, our 1% earnings tax. I do plan to have some professionals, from the St. Louis Federal Reserve and some other entities coming before us to kind of help guide us in a general sense about the city's financial position and that sort of thing. But rather than take a vote today, I'm just going to formally ask you all to take a look at this and provide any feedback on things you may or may not want us to consider as a committee. I also want to recognize that we've got to get through the budget. So on tomorrow, we do have a hearing on the calendar. With no objections from the committee, I'd like to consider having plan to have our adds and minuses discussion on Wednesday so that we can have some.
You have it on the schedule for?
I asked our staff to have that scheduled for Wednesday. I'm not really sure we have tomorrow scheduled. I think as a matter of charter business to consider every day. I as the chair, I didn't ask for a hearing tomorrow. It shouldn't be on tomorrow. Okay, that's right. Okay, that's what I thought. So it is on Wednesday. Okay, thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
Tomorrow?
We are not meeting tomorrow. I was a little bit confused as well because I hadn't called a hearing, but it was on our calendar as it was presented us this morning. I think we are, but with exceptions. So, say that again?
Tomorrow or Wednesday based on.
Okay.
As of today, we've gotten through all the departments, so there'll be an additional period, an extra day for consideration of any additions and minuses. So we'll need to be prepared for that on Wednesday. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, we do have takeaway and add sheets that I'd like to make sure everybody has in their position. And with that, I will entertain.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, yes, please.
So I was asked to introduce a few pay bills for some of the county offices, and some of them are being introduced this Friday, and one of them was introduced last week. So in order to follow the schedule for raises, as you just did today with Board Bill 47, would they have had to have been heard today?
No, I don't. I mean, well, to follow the exact same schedule of having a pay raise by June 18th, yes. I mean, we have to have those through. But, again, it's my understanding that those county office positions are still receiving the pay merit that the rest of our city employees are receiving in accordance with the budget. I'm not,
They all just have separate pay bills very similarly, but their pay bills are just separate than Board Bill 47 because they're not
civil service.
So
Correct.
it makes sense that they would go through different pay bills, but perhaps they weren't aware of the timeline when they asked me to.
I mean, I do think these.
I'm sorry, so you saying these departments contacted you to push their
Right,
bill?
the Collector Revenue Treasurer's Office and the Board of Elections.
So all those people that you speaking on already know the process, so it's not like this is
I just want to
different.
make sure that I don't have to try to get their bills heard on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, they know the process.
Them haven't been introduced yet, so that'd be impossible.
Yeah.
As long as, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
I don't
And
want anybody
normally
not
they just
getting
do
paid.
it from the floor. No, they just do it from the floor. That's why I'm confused. Why would they not
It depend
know?
on the bill.
You know what I'm saying? Greg Daly.
What I was saying.
Gary Stoff, and who's the other person?
Adam Lane, Treasurer's Office.
Yeah, they should know the process. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, but you can ask the chair.
I got a question.
Sure,
And
go
maybe
ahead.
this is a Paul Payne question. So going back to, and he made sure he got out of here at the right time. So going back to just what the director said, so Board of Elections, which I would assume if they want a pay increase, that would come out of the city's budget.
Correct.
The treasurer's office pay increase, would that come out of his budget since he's a county office?
The treasurer's office is an enterprise fund, which is totally different than all the other county offices, as a matter of fact, in that regard.
So is that a yes or no?
Would come out, the treasurer is under no obligation to provide us revenue from
But the
his
city wouldn't be,
office.
the city wouldn't foot the bill.
The city foots the bill by letting that office operate separately.
The city wouldn't fit the pay increase bill.
For the treasurer's office, no, that would happen separately.
Same thing as collector revenue?
Yeah, the collector revenue operates within a certain budget, you're right,
So we
those
would,
two.
where we may be out of balance, would that be the Board of Elections since it would come out the city?
Correct, the Board of Elections, the sheriff's office, which also comes out of the general fund, the circuit attorney's office, if they're gonna handle a separate bill on that. Trying to think of all the county offices. Recorder of deeds, if he does have a separate pay bill, yeah,
And
Recorder's deeds office already submitted
Yeah.
theirs. That's why I say all of those directors, aldermen, Aldridge, they already know the process. That's why I'm surprised they all gave it to Alderwoman Schweitzer, like they didn't know. They know the process.
I know Ms. Keys has one for recorded deeds, is
That's
that?
what I just said. I just told Alderwoman Schweitzer, I said, well, the recorded deeds was already been presented. It was already on the floor last Friday.
Yeah, I saw it. It was
Yeah.
introduced.
But it was,
yeah.
we haven't,
fascinating. I'm sorry, I didn't take a look at that because what the recorder indicated today is his revenue is pretty much equal exactly to the cost of his office, and we probably shouldn't consider subsidizing the recorder of deed office because it is a fee-based office with general revenue, would be my, I don't think we've ever done that before. But I'm not sure what he's presented, so I don't know what the fiscal note is on that. So I think what we should do, rather than try to guess what's happening, is lean into our financial financial analyst, and then on each of those bills, present and prepare a fiscal note so that it can be indicated where any additional funds would come from, if it would come from the general fund or from within those budgets. Does that make sense?
it does, and I
Yeah.
appreciate the committee for entertaining, just being new, trying to figure it out, so I appreciate it.
Is there a criteria for, so if these are all county offices, and like what Alderman Aldridge was asking, like the sheriff's office, some of that comes out of our general funds, but then none of the treasurer's office does, or is there a criteria for if you're a county office, when it's general funds, or is that just decided by law?
That is generally speaking handled by state law. So we are a city that we don't have a county. We're very unusual in the world. I mean, there's several that do, but there's not really that many cities without a county. So because of that, state law requires every county have those specific functions as they're outlined in state law. So the state requires that a county have a recorder of deeds. Because we're a city that's not in a county, like St. Louis County has its own recorder of deeds, we have to provide our own as a city. It's very archaic, honestly, and it's a function of state law. So the state also dictates that the treasurer's office handle parking and operate in the way it does. The state law also has the provisions related to the recorder of deeds office and where their fees, where their cost of doing business boundaries as a percentage of their overall fees they collect. So most of this is handled by state law, and it is confusing. And it is extremely unusual, honestly. We're a city that functions in silos of budgets that are very unusual because of our existence within the state of Missouri as a city without outside of a county. So it is, the layers of siloing are impressive and not exactly always very intuitive.
Excuse me, Chair Spencer, I just want clarification on tomorrow. Now, are you not meeting tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, you're going to go ahead and come back and discuss the changes or your final decisions to the budget?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So for clarification purposes, I will follow what was presented to the public, but it was my understanding that we had not called a hearing on Tuesday. So if there was no hearing called and the agenda before us had that incorrect, then what we'll do is just meet on Wednesday in accordance with our public notification. Okay.
So we will resume at our normal time on Wednesday at 9:30.
Correct. Thank you so much for the clarification. And I want to, even though nobody else is here except Austin and our STL TV and our staff, but just really, really thank this committee. We did an excellent job in due diligence in our city's budget this year. I think diving into the functions of our departments, for me, even having served on this board for several years, was incredibly instructive and very helpful. And I feel better grounded than I ever have in how kind of departments are functioning and their budgets and how things are really moving forward in our city. So thank you all. I know this was an enormous amount of time. It was a huge commitment. The vast majority were here for every hearing, very engaged, and I'm really impressed with the work that we've all done thus far in considering the city's budget as our first matter of business. So thank you all. Yes, go ahead, Alderman Aldridge.
I promise I'm gonna keep it short because I know we're ready to get out of here. I do want to say also, as a new member, I know probably sometimes the questions may have been either redundant or for older members, like just trying to figure it out maybe offline. But as a new member, I really do want to thank the chairwoman for really allowing us to dive into the budget process and not just skip over it. I think this has been helpful for me and Alderwoman from the 7th Ward as we're trying to figure out everything about the city and also try to figure out the departments and ways that we could be a help. So thank you, Madam Chair, and also to my colleagues on the committee for allowing us to ask as many questions as possible. And a huge thank you to STL TV, but also to our staff, especially this past week and weekend. They had to work outside of their typical 9 to 5 hours to really accommodate this committee for public hearings. So I want to give a huge shout out to our clerk, Aura, our head clerk, Mr. Kennedy, Madam Clerk, Sharita, and every other staff, our financial analyst who's been helpful, and every other staff in some type of way, Ms. Tracy and others that have helped make this committee be successful and have the right documentation. So thank you, Madam Chair, thank you, colleagues, and thank you to the staff. Thank you.
I echo that. I mean, it was even just organizing and figuring out the scheduling was no small feat. And of course, I think it was very helpful that all of our department heads, were very, very accommodating and coming before us and communicative and willing to answer all of our questions for the most part. So with that, this concludes the hearings from departments on our budget, and thank you all for participating. We did not have any minutes to approve this time. We'll have to approve a series of meeting minutes next time. We were kind of doing them in tranches as they were kind of getting collected. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no objections, the Budget and Public Employees Committee hearing is adjourned.